Welcome to Postcards, a brief look at people, places, the arts and curiosities from around the world. On today's program, 22 European countries submit entries for the prestigious Europa Nostra Awards. Behind the scenes prior to the world-class London Marathon. Delegates from 151 countries discuss the future of endangered species. Conserving and encouraging the dwindling population of the charming and curious seahorse. And continuing the theme, an exhibition in Greenwich celebrates the labours of artists whose work features beside the sea. But first up, auction house Christie's stages Treasures of the North, a unique showcase of 300 masterpieces drawn specifically from important private collections in the north of Britain. And many of them, belonging to people like the Duke of Westminster and the Earl of Halifax, have never before been seen in public. The exhibition includes many of the portraits popular in English collections, like Sir Thomas Lawrence's The Red Boy, and the Honourable Victoria Stanley by John Singer Sargent, a charming portrait from the Edwardian era. Among an exceptional selection of Dutch paintings are 17th century works like A Picture Gallery by David Tenier and an interior with artist eating oysters by Jan Steen. They're all helping to raise money for Christie's Hospital in Manchester. Above all, the exhibition is a celebration of northern taste and the wealth created by the Industrial Revolution. That industry allowed northern families to commission paintings by northern artists. These, by Joseph Wright of Derby, feature the depiction of candlelight, a new genre in the 1760s. And the Grosvenor Hunt by Liverpool artist George Stubbs is a fine example of sporting art, an essentially English phenomenon in the 18th century. It shows Stubbs as an absolute master of the genre. Lawrence Stephen Lowry's more modern paintings too have an obvious right of place here. But the exhibition also features works like Monet's Poplars on the Banks of the Ept and Dante Gabriel Rossetti's A Christmas Carol, as well as paintings by Degas and Van Gogh. Superb English and French furniture also gets a showing here, like this Regency giltwood sofa and armchairs, probably made in Lancaster, and a pair of George III satinwood ebony and marquetry urns and pedestals, made by Thomas Chippendale Jr. Rare silver, porcelain and jewellery complement the Northern Showcase. A mid-Victorian pearl and diamond bracelet and brooch is displayed, courtesy of the Duke of Westminster. Probably the star of the show, though, is the Drake Cup, presented to Sir Francis Drake by a grateful Queen Elizabeth I on his return with a vast treasure after the explorer's circumnavigation of the globe. The British monarch's imposing palace of Windsor Castle, the nation's oldest primary school in Oxfordshire. A Victorian garden at a manor house in Buckinghamshire. A memorial to a royal prince in central London. And an area of outstanding natural beauty on a south coast island. These 5 very diverse examples of exceptional restoration and conservation work have earned the praise of the judges at a pan-European awards ceremony this week. Prestigious Europa Nostra Awards were introduced to protect Europe's cultural heritage and environment. The backers represents over 400 non-governmental organisations and tens of thousands of individuals. In 1999, over 125 entries were submitted for medals and diplomas from 22 European countries. The winning projects represent 14 of those countries. British locations scooped 5 of the 27 available prizes, an impressive number in comparison with other European nations. Representatives of the UK projects were invited to Windsor Castle to receive their awards from the Europa Nostra judging panel. The 5-year restoration effort at Windsor Castle received the highest honour, one of only 8 medals awarded for the most outstanding entries. In the very chapel where a devastating fire started in November 1992, and in front of the plaque where the restoration effort is commemorated, the Duke of Edinburgh personally received the medal on behalf of Windsor and spoke for all 4 British winners. Windsor Castle was built on high ground above the River Thames soon after the Norman conquest in 1080. Ever since, it has served as a favourite royal residence, even today by Queen Elizabeth II, and it welcomes thousands of overseas visitors each year. But in November 1992, Windsor Castle was dealt a cruel blow. During routine repair works, a curtain was set alight, and flames quickly spread to the roof and beyond. 9 major staterooms and over 100 lesser rooms were badly damaged. Extensive historical research, archaeological investigation and exceptional craftsmanship was employed to replicate as accurately as possible the original features and materials. What could be salvaged was retained. Traditional building techniques were interwoven with those of today, recognising the resilience and practicalities of new materials and practices. 5 years later, the work was completed. The results speak for themselves. First-time visitors are hard pushed to differentiate the new from the old. Not only has the original structure been rebuilt and its contents restored to their former glory, but many practical improvements have been made to the daily functioning of the castle, not least of all its full fire protection and security. In the words of the Duke of Edinburgh, the castle now is of more use than it ever was. The superb standard of conservation research and techniques, together with exceptional project management, earned for Windsor Castle the highest of all accolades from Europa Nostra. Nestling in Oxfordshire's Shilton Hills is Britain's oldest primary school, using its original buildings. The village school of Ewelme was established in 1437, thanks to a charitable deed by Alice Chaucer, daughter of the renowned writer Geoffrey. The school is part of an historic group of medieval village buildings, which also includes the church and courtyard almshouses. The new head teacher had raised educational standards and so staved off plans for closure, but they had run out of room. The challenge for the appointed architects was to improve and modernise the existing facilities, things like the heating, storage and the playground, as well as create additional teaching space. Hence the upper of the 2 existing classrooms, enhanced with the construction of a raised library gallery. The other classroom converted to a much-needed assembly-cum-dining hall. A fire-safe stairway links the floors. Building the new classroom space presented the biggest challenge. School must-haves included flexible spaces with protected access, and planning regulations dictated windows could only overlook the existing school, any buildings having minimal visual impact. New materials mimic original features. The woodwork is traditional oak and the modern windows are automated. The project has undoubtedly extended the life of an important historical building and helped retain the strong architectural character of the village. And perhaps most importantly of all, it's a surefire hit with the pupils too. In contrast, the stunning garden at Waddesdon Manor in Buckinghamshire was the only Europa Nostra diploma for horticultural enterprise. Created in the late 1800s by Baron Ferdinand de Rothschild, in its heyday, the lavish garden was a perfect example of Victorian extravagance horticulture, renowned for its colour and formal geometric bedding displays. But by the time it was bequeathed to the National Trust in 1957, the house and grounds had declined. 4 decades on, a restoration plan was well advanced, with a special graduate of the Royal Botanical Gardens actively involved, Beth Rothschild. Beth designed this parterre from old drawings, and today it forms the centrepiece of the new Waddesdon Manor garden. Raised ribbon beds have been restyled with the benefit of modern steel edging and automated watering. And the intense Victorian colour has been replicated with a changing regime of massed bedding plants, an amazing 120,000 each year. Other changes are reducing the carriageway width to enlarge lawns, repairing the north fountain, installing architectural lighting, improving access through the replanted woodlands, and restoring a formerly lost area of subtropical plants. In its period heyday, Waddesdon boasted a ground force of over 100 staff gardeners. Today the results are largely down to volunteers and the education program cited by the Europa Nostra judges. Waddesdon has undoubtedly found again its original splendour, to be enjoyed by more than 160,000 visitors every year. Located off the south coast of Britain, the Isle of Wight boasts an intricate coastal landscape, well worthy of its designation as an area of outstanding natural beauty. The Island 2000 Trust, charged with the preservation of this rich environmental heritage, impressed Europa Nostra by employing limited resources through an imaginative and ongoing management process on a range of small projects. Local craftsmen were commissioned to design and create a variety of features, to increase public awareness of and accessibility to the chines. These eye-catching cycle racks line the route of the road connecting the chines. Island 2000's projects are an essential part of maintaining the Isle of Wight's unique position in recreational tourism. The ever-changing south coast climate not necessarily a deterrent for everyone. It's one of London's most prominent, if a little overdone, landmarks. For years, the Albert Memorial was hidden from public view, while extensive restoration work was carried out. Over 5 years, the original gold leaf was replaced on the statue, the ornamental mosaics and bronze cleaned, and damaged leadwork treated against corrosion. The homegrown technicians, craftsmen and architects who restored and masterminded the preservation of the 5 British projects can rest proud this weekend, proud that their exceptional talents and skills have been honoured on one of the grandest of world stages. With 3 days to go before Marathon Day, Greenwich Park in southeast London is almost deserted. But on Sunday, thousands of runners will be squeezing along this famous avenue of trees at the start of a 26.2-mile journey to Westminster. The marathon will snake its way from Greenwich to Tower Bridge, double back for a long loop through Docklands and past some of the historic landmarks of the capital before finishing in the Mall, central London. The London draws a high-quality field. These 2 top athletes from Kenya are expected to be the front-runners in the women's race. Both the men's and women's race look set to be exceptional this year. Both the men's and women's world record holders are in the field this year, and no less than 11 of the women have personal bests under 2 hours 30. A world record performance is on the cards if the conditions are right. This will be no grudge match though. Tegla LaRoupe and her compatriot and reigning London champion, Joyce Chepchumba, are training partners and flatmates as well as rivals. The elite runners are paid handsomely, but it takes a ballot to whittle down the number of entries from the tens of thousands of hopeful runners who apply each year to a manageable field of some 30,000. After registering for the race and getting that treasured race number, the participants have the chance to look over the latest in running gear and go-fast technology on offer at the marathon exhibition. Waterproof jackets, great for winter running. But what about those blustery days when a t-shirt just isn't enough? Answer: zip into a windproof vest. A fan simulates the wind chill factor when you're battling against a headwind. The infrared camera shows that while your arms will get cold, your body stays warm. And after the run, what about this? Aqua massage is a cross between a massage and warm bath. Jets of temperature-controlled water can get right to those sore back and leg muscles in no time. No wonder it's catching on in gyms and health centres. And if you've got worries about your running style, you can get expert analysis on exactly what you're doing wrong and which shoe would suit you best. Although some runners are leaving it until the last minute to get those niggling injuries sorted out for this year's race. Here's a man who's got more on his mind than running style. Captain Beano is helping to raise money for a children's charity by volunteering to have baked beans poured over him. He's also running the race in fancy dress, and he's far from alone. A clutch of runners shunned simple shorts and vests and took to the catwalk in cold and rainy Covent Garden to compete for the prize for the Best Fancy Dress Award.
Now, a charity WizKids raise funds to provide tailor-made mobility aids for disabled children. This year, the charity celebrates its 10th birthday, hence the yummy cake. There's a bunch of grapes.
This skimpy bunch of grapes costume won a special award for sheer bravery from the judges, given the current unseasonal London weather.
Now based in Bristol.
Popeye, his girlfriend Olive Oil on his back, will be happy with a cold day with this rubbery outfit. All he'll need is a can of spinach. The costumes and fundraising side of the race makes London unique among big city marathons. 80% of the participants are running for their favourite charity or good cause. This year it is expected to raise over $32 million US.
Our first prize this year goes to the Lone Ranger. The Lone Ranger!
It's $3,200 US prize money for the Lone Ranger and a place in next year's race for the others, as well as the magnum of champagne. Of course, behind the fun and games, there's been months of work limbering up for the big day and building up the mileage. This mixed group of seasoned and debutante marathoners are running for MenCap, the UK charity supporting people with learning difficulties and their families. They all have different reasons for doing it. MenCap is the official charity for this year's race, an accolade for which there is always much competition. For many, this is the biggest fundraising event of the year. MenCap is hoping to raise over $1 million. The start of the marathon, an unforgettable moment for anyone lucky enough to get a place, as over 30,000 cheering and whooping runners start their long journey. Crowds will cheer them every step of the way, and this being London, 42 separate bands will lift flagging spirits. 26 miles later, for many, the pace has slowed, but the cheers of the crowds propel tired and aching feet to the finish line. And on Sunday afternoon, there'll be some blistered feet and aching joints in London. But few will let the pain overshadow the joy of their achievement in completing the London. Whales, once hunted close to extinction, have been protected since 1986 by international agreement. But a partial lifting of the whaling ban could result from this meeting of the United Nations Convention that regulates trade in endangered species. Japan and Norway argue that stocks of certain whales are healthy enough to hunt. Environmental groups are against any change. They believe the sanctioned resumption of hunting of whales will mean an increased level of illegal hunting. CITES, or the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species, is meeting in the Kenyan capital Nairobi. The future for the ban on killing of Africa's and India's elephants, together with the whaling issue, is expected to dominate discussion at the convention, which brings together 2,000 delegates from 151 countries. Thousands of elephants ended up like this, killed for their tusks before the ivory trade was outlawed a decade ago. 4 southern African states now want the go-ahead to sell off ivory from elephants who died naturally. But conference hosts Kenya and India, together with environmental campaign groups, warn that this could reignite poaching and threaten recovering elephant numbers. But CITES is not just concerned with big, well-known animals. The convention currently protects 900 animal and plant species, while the trade in thousands of others is regulated. It's about protecting biodiversity. For many developing countries, the conference is also about getting help in their efforts to police agreements. The organisers are keen to see richer countries lend a hand. As well as reviewing the protection of species, the Nairobi meeting will also discuss ways to support sustainable use of wildlife, a vital way to win support for conservation among local people. And London Zoo is co-directing an international campaign to save another species under threat, one of the most mystical and mysterious treasures of the oceans, the seahorse. They're the stuff of seafaring legends, but pollution, habitat degradation and low birth rate means seahorses have been placed on the vulnerable list. One species has been classified as endangered. Their charming behaviour and curious features make them targets for aquarium keepers, but the biggest threat comes from the unsustained harvesting for the Chinese medicine trade, which covets them for the properties supposedly derived from their unusual breeding habits. The male and female actually form a bond for life, and they reinforce this every morning with a little courtship dance. When they're ready and the female's eggs are ripe, they go into a full mating dance, and the female passes the eggs into the male's pouch. It then seals up and the eggs develop within the protection of the pouch. The male then goes into a lengthy labour and pumps out perfectly formed miniature seahorses. While most fish spawn millions of eggs, the seahorse will produce as few as 25 young. In Chinese medicine, the seahorse is used to treat asthma, lethargy and impotence. In their dried form, seahorses are more valuable than silver. But Dr. Heather Hall of London's Aquarium is not out to demonise Chinese medicine. She says 1/3 of the world's population uses traditional medicines, and their use has been recognised by the World Health Organization. It's a very valid form of healthcare, and what is needed is to work in partnership with the Chinese medicine community to stop them being used unsustainably. Besides the UK, Project Seahorse is operating through Canada, North America, the Philippines and Hong Kong. For years, Britain's coastline has inspired countless artists with its changing moods. One day sun-splashed and serene, the next turbulent and threatening. The world over, and especially in Europe and the USA, British artists are renowned for their portrayal of spectacular coastal scenes. Now, in celebration of their work, the National Maritime Museum at Greenwich has opened an exhibition dedicated to their labours, aptly dubbed Beside the Sea. One of the highlights of the showcase is the Tidal series by a Greenwich-based family of artists, the Boyles. It's a study over a number of years of the same section of coastline in Sussex, a record of the effects that the sea has on the beach. Many artists have used England's Cornish and Devon coasts for inspiration. Alfred Wallace favoured this area, a deep-sea fisherman who became a painter. His abstract style was later followed by many artists in 20th century Britain. John Brett is renowned for his stretches of coastline. He would venture out in his yacht, sketch the shore, and return to his studio to complete the work. He would even write descriptions of what he could see on the canvas. Brett also used photography to capture his scenes. It's not clear, though, if the photographs were used to help with the painting. Curators at the National Maritime Museum believe Britain's ever-changing coastline has, in the past, been the trademark of Britain's art, and that it will continue to be so for many years to come. And that's all for today. Join us again next time for a postcard look at interesting people, places, the arts and curiosities.